You are listening to the Culinary Courtesan, the edutainment podcast about lifestyle, wine, and spirits. Hosted by Yolanda Shoshana. Let's get this party started. Hey, it's Yolanda Shoshana, and this is the Culinary Courtesan. I so appreciate you tuning in. This podcast is all about getting you off on gastronomy. In this episode, I want to talk to you about beer. Now, I've been very honest that I sleep on beer, but it is something that I actually really enjoy. I went on a beer press trip a few years ago to Cincinnati, and I said yes to that trip because I was curious, but I found that I actually really enjoy beer. Belgian beer, that is. And I learned a lot, and I learned so much about the beer community, which is very different than wine and spirits, and in some cases it's more accessible. Now, most people think of white guys in flannel shirts when they think about beer, but beer is made all around the world, and women actually are the ones who started brewing beer first, and more women are in the industry, and people around the world are making beer. Lots of different races, lots of different religions. So do open your mind when you think about what beer means. I went to a very interesting beer event last year. Was it this year? I don't even remember. I go to a lot of events. And that beer was celebrating, actually I think it was this year. It was celebrating a book called About Beer, and two of the scientists wrote the book. And we sat around the dinosaur fossils, and we sipped beer, which was really kind of cool. And one of them said something so interesting. He said that he thought beer was more diverse than wine because it doesn't depend on terroir. And that is very true. Beer is all about the ingredients, and you can get ingredients from anywhere and combine them. And that kind of really opened my eyes about the potential of beer and what one can do, because as you know, there's lots of different flavors in beer, and now that we're hitting the autumn season, pumpkin beer is going to be the most popular choice. Now, as I stated, I like beer, but my favorite beer has got to be Belgian beer, and it's probably because of that French influence, because you know I'm a huge Francophile. Belgian beer are primarily ales with a heavy emphasis on malts and fruity yeast. Now, the beer of Belgium, which I would love to go to Belgium just to sip beer because there's so many, varies from pale ales to pale lagers to lambic beers, sour brown ales, and stouts. In Belgium alone, there are 224 active breweries, which is a lot if you think about it. And brewing in Belgium dates back to the 12th century. It was the local French and Flemish abbeys that first started brewing and distributed beer. So, you know, the monks got it in. The monks were all about their brew. And since it was low alcoholic back in the day, it was preferential to drink beer over water. Because, you know, there was a time when water was not so clean and clear, so people actually drank beer instead, believe it or not. So there are 4 types of fermentation in Belgian beer: spontaneous fermentation, warm fermentation, mixed fermentation, and cool fermentation. Now, not to get too geeky about it, I just want to give you a few of my favorite Belgian beers. Most of these beers you can find anywhere and everywhere, and I picked them due to that. But there are tons of breweries making a Belgian style beer, so make sure you definitely check them out. If you think you don't like beer, go for the Belgium. I have a feeling you're going to really enjoy it, because I will say the one thing I love about Belgian beer is it's so great paired with food. Whether it's cheese, burgers, those chicken fingers at the bar, pizza, and the list goes on and on. Anything nice and fried goes great with a beer, right? So first up, we have the Saison Dupoint. This has got to be one of my favorite beers. It is a farm style beer, and it is so wonderful. It's a saison, which means season, and I love this beer. It's got great aromas, and it's got a dry finish, and you can pretty much find this beer anywhere. It's a staple because it's like more on the luxury end. It's going to cost you a few more coins than some of the other beers, but I'm telling you, it's totally worth it. I tried this beer first, I want to say, on that Cincinnati trip, and I fell absolutely in love with it. It is delicious, and since whenever I'm at a bar, or if it's an option when I'm at an event, that's the beer that I get, and most people get it. It's preferred for bartenders. It's just absolutely delicious. Like I said, though, you're going to look at the price and go, really? But definitely pick that over your Miller Lights and your Bud Light, because you won't be sorry. Next up is Rheingeist. Now, this one you can't find everywhere. This is very central to Ohio, but you can also find this beer in Kentucky, Massachusetts, Indiana, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Nashville, Tennessee. Rheingeist means Ghost of the Rhine, which is over the Rhine, a brewery district in Cincinnati. Beer was big in Cincinnati due to all the Germans, and they would send it down the Rhine, which is this river. And they have rebuilt this area, so there's all this brewing that's going on. So I highly recommend when next time you are in Cincinnati to check out Rheingeist. It's also a place where people love to go and eat and hang out. You can go with your family. And the brewery has grown tremendously. They are very successful and they are wonderful. But they make some Belgian style beer that I think is absolutely delicious. They're blonde Belgian style and whatever they may have in season. Because, you know, the great thing about breweries is that they're always trying new things. So if they have a Belgian style, one I probably haven't tried at this point, I highly recommend them. Then, if you're into a bubbly kind of Belgian beer, the Deuce Brut beer is your choice. It's like the champagne of beer. This beer is a sparkling beer, and it's matured in the Champagne region of France. And it undergoes a simple fermentation, and it's made in the champagne method. Hello, baby. So think Dom Perignon meets Duval, which is a huge Belgian beer company. And it's really for those sophisticated beer drinkers. And it looks like it's in a champagne bottle. And it's bubbly. So what's not to love about this? So this is when you really feel fancy. This is when you're having, you know, great for every day, but a fancier meal perhaps. You know, the great thing about beer is it goes great with meat. So I would pair this with maybe a steak, maybe something from the crock pot like a meatloaf or something like that. Something, you know, hearty and delicious to get that bubbly in. Or it's also great with pizza because, as I've said before, sparkling wine is great with pizza. So why not a sparkling beer? You know, pizza and beer are great together. So why not a sparkling beer with like a pepperoni and garlic pizza or like a 4-cheese garlic situation? Doesn't that sound good? I think that sounds great. Next up is another one of my favorite breweries, and it's in Cooperstown, New York. And you know I love Cooperstown. I've mentioned this before. It's in upstate New York. The Ommegang. Ommegang is such a great brewery. They also are the ones that made the Game of Thrones beer. So if you had Game of Thrones beer, you've had Ommegang. I don't know if they're still making that beer, but if you find the Game of Thrones beer, delicious. I wasn't a fan of the show, but I was a fan of the beer. And they make farmstead Belgian style beer. All their beer is Belgian style. And they also throw concerts at their brewery. It's just a really great place for the community in Cooperstown. They've been around since 1997. So they grew so fast and they couldn't even make the demand. So the company was sold to Duval, which I've mentioned before, known for their Belgian beer. And Duval, though, stays out of the way. So you're getting local farmstead Belgian beer from upstate New York. And it's sold in 46 states and also in France. So you can find Ommegang pretty much anywhere and everywhere. And they've got this rosé beer that is delicious. I know summer's pretty much over, but the rosé beer goes great for any time. But I recommend all of their beer. It's just so good. There's something for everybody. Last but not least, and some of you may even side-eye this choice, but I'm going to put on the list Stella Artois. And people either love or they hate Stella. It's a very interesting beer. It's controversial in lots of ways. But Stella it's not the most fancy beer around, but it's a solid beer. It's a solid Belgian beer, and it's been around for years, and you can find Stella Artois anywhere. It's a staple on most beer menus because people love it, and it's solid. And it's perfect for everyday sipping, great with a burger, great with pretty much anything and everything. It's wonderful. It's also great to cook with when you are putting something in the crock pot, when you're crock potting and doing beer recipes. You know, we're getting to that season where autumn is coming in, so it's time to dust off that crock pot. Cooking with beer is so great with a crock pot. You throw in some meat, you throw in a little bit of beer, and then you let it cook for a few hours, and the meat is tender, juicy, delicious, and it's got that beer taste to it. Stella is good for that. So I highly recommend it. They also make a good cider. So if you're a cider drinker, it's a pretty solid cider as well. You can cook with that, or you just can pair it with whatever, and they handpick all of their apples. So those are some of my picks for Belgian style beer. I hope you enjoy National Beer Day. It's a good day to get those brews in. And if you aren't a beer drinker, think out of the box. Go for it. Try something different. Try something new. Once again, I am a fan of the Belgian style because it's got that French flair that I so love and desire. I think it's something you would enjoy as well. But there's so many breweries, so little time. Maybe Belgium's not the way you want to go. Maybe you want an IPA, or you're into the stouts and all that good stuff. Stouts are really great to cook with as well. But think out of the box and always support your local breweries, no matter where you are, because they tend to make some really good brews and they're using local products, and you're probably going to really enjoy the taste, and they're going to be fresh and delicious. Thank you so much for tuning in. I would love to know what Belgian beer you like. And I just want to throw in one more brewery that's in New York that I did not put on the list, but I really enjoy their beer, the Coney Island Brewery. Now, next time you're in Coney Island, I know it's a hot spot for people that come to New York. They've got great beer. I went to a beer dinner probably now about a year and a half ago there. Their beer is wonderful. And they make a pumpkin beer that's absolutely delicious. I highly recommend them. I don't know where all they are distributed, but I know that if you're in New York, you're going to be able to find that beer. So if you are here and can make it to Coney Island, you can go to the brewery. It's a small place, but they brew everything on site. And young brewmaster, I think you'd really enjoy it. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and don't forget to stop by awitchintheworld.com, sign up for my newsletter, Pompette, and until next time, peace, love, and cheers.